Vijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privajakacarya Astotartata Shri Srimad Nitya Lila Pravistam His Divine Grace Shilabhai Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Iskan's BBD Founder Acharya Jagaguru Padita Bhavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Gaur Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service, text number 35. Bhakti Yogas Cha Yogas Cha Maya Manavi Udirita Yayor Ekatarenaiva Purusham Prajet Bhakti Yogas Cha Maya Manavi Udirita Yayor Ekatarenaiva Purusham Prajet Bhakti Yogas Cha Mayi Manavi Udirita Yayor Ekatarenaiva Purusham Brajet Bhakti Yogas Cha Mayi Manavi Udirita Yayor Ekatarenaiva Purusham Brajet. Ladies. Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, cha, and yoga, mystic yoga, cha, also, Maya, by me, Manavi, O daughter of Manu, Udirita, describe, Yayo, of which, to Ekaterina, by either one, Eva, alone, Purusha, a person, Purusham, the supreme person, Brajet, can achieve. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. Is this loud enough? Yes? Herein, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Dev, perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of bhakti yoga. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. As previously described, a yogi is advised to meditate on the form of Lord Vishnu from point to point, from the ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and in this way gradually up to the face, and then to the ornaments. There is no question of impersonal meditation. When by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God, that is the point of bhakti yoga, and at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purusha Purusham Brajet, the Purusha, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one, but both are defined as Purusha. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Godhead and in the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer. and the spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quality of enjoyment is not equal. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An analogy may be made with a rich man and a poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, and when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and the small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. That is like Bhakti Yoga. Purusha Purusham Brajet. When the living entity enters into the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, he enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, when the living entity wants to enjoy by imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his desire is called Maya, and it puts him in the material atmosphere. A living entity who wants to enjoy on his personal account and not cooperate with the Supreme Lord is engaged in materialistic life. As soon as he dovetails his enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is engaged in spiritual life. An example may be cited here. The different limbs of the body cannot enjoy life independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. In so doing, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Abheda, simultaneous oneness and difference. The living entity cannot enjoy life in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing Bhakti Yoga. It is said herein that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead by either the yoga process or the Bhakti Yoga process. This indicates that factually there's no difference between yoga and Bhakti Yoga because the target of both is Vishnu. In the modern age, however, a yoga process has been manufactured which aims at something void and impersonal. Actually, yoga means meditation on the form of Lord Vishnu. If the yoga practice is actually performed according to the standard direction, there is no difference between yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamitam Yena Tasmai Shri Rave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapidam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gada Mayam Dadati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raganatam Vidham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vidhamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Titanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Divyad Brindaranya Kalpachumada, Srimad Ratnagara Singha Srimad Radha Shilagovinda Devo, Pastalabi Sevimano Smarahami, Bhakti Yogascha, Maya Manavadirata, Yayor Ekatare Naiva, Purusham Brajet. My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Here, Krishna, as Kapila Dev, is very personally speaking. This chapter is called Explanation of Devotional Service, but it is the Lord Himself giving the explanation. So it's not just a factual, a revelation of facts or just information, but of course whatever Krishna says is automatically knowledge, perfect knowledge, complete knowledge, but He's also speaking it personally because He's a person. He's the Supreme Person. So whatever He says is simultaneously, because it's from His heart, there's no doubt or ambiguity or inharmonious motivation by anything that the Lord says. Whatever the Lord says, whatever His instruction, is all good for everyone in all times, places, and circumstances. Prabhupada would say repeatedly when speaking all over the world, especially on Bhagavad Gita, that we are presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada would say, before I came to America or to the Western countries, so many swamis and yogis came over hundreds of years, but not one person ever became a devotee of Krishna. But now that I have come and presented Bhagavad Gita as it is, so many hundreds and thousands of people are coming forward and being devotees, practicing Krishna consciousness as it is. Just like Kapila Dev is saying here, one who applies the science of devotional service in this way can achieve the supreme abode, can achieve the Supreme Person simply by that self-same practice of devotional service. So Krishna has just, Kapila Dev has just given us a ascension in understanding ultimately, and he's doing this, how the Brahman devotee is the best of all living entities. And the reason? Because such a person is, therefore I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine. And therefore dedicates all his activities and all of his life, everything, unto me without cessation. Prabhupada begins, of course, this was written, Prabhupada is translating third canto, 1968, 1969, and so to speak, the first kind of introduction or understanding of the American people of what is Eastern philosophy and its practice was being
misrepresented by this impersonal yoga fad that was mixed in with the overall rebellion against the stiffness of 1950s America, the counterculture revolution. Anything from the East must be good, and it's in vogue, it's in cool, it's fashion. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. The demigods, they're glorifying Krishna in the womb of Mother Devaki in the second chapter of the 10th canto, that the impersonalist yogis, they fall down from their position of imagined superiority. Everyone in the material world is imagining themselves to be something much more greater and important than what they actually are. There was the funny play, Big Fish, Little Fish, that was put on by some of the foremost dramatic devotees, disciples of Srila Prabhupada back in the day, and the so-called little fish who left the big fish's abode, the living entity. He's leaving Krishna's abode and he's being sent to the material world. Then the first person he meets is Maya personified, and so he's a little bewildered as to where he is and what's going on, and he gets some type of false assurance from Maya that you're in the right place. He's saying, you know, I was sent here because I was told that I could be the big fish. Am I in the right place? And Maya said, oh yeah, everybody up here is the big fish. Of course, such a thing is very confusing and confrontational, because there can only be one big fish. There can only be one Supreme Personality of Godhead. There cannot be two, what to speak of many. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. There is no question of impersonal meditation. And by that meditation, in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God. That is the point of Bhakti Yoga. And at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Prabhupada writes in one place, one who thinks himself to be Brahman is a jnani, or mental speculator, or an impersonalist. But one who acts as Brahman is a pure devotee. And at that point of Bhakti Yoga, you must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental abode. That devotional service is non-different than the Lord and non-different than his abode. It was Advaita Acharya who told to Lord Chaitanya, wherever you are, that is Vrindavan. And Prabhupada writes there in that purport in the Bhagavad Gita, the pure devotee can create the Vrindavan atmosphere anywhere by his pure and empowered devotional service. Here we are before the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, who seemingly or plausibly are sitting here in New York City at 305 Skimmerhorn Street in Brooklyn, zip code 11217. That's true on one level, but ultimately they're situated in Goloka Vrindavan, and their temple is also not of this material world. But simultaneously, they're showing us what is the best possible ambient atmosphere in all its beautiful variegatedness and desirability of what it means to live in this place. Why? Because they are the Lord of every place. Their dominance, their proprietorship, their exclusive right is everywhere, over everything and everyone, because they're the supreme king and queen, to be worshiped, obeyed, and served by everyone. So we, by residing here, are helping the, well, at this point we can call them doleful denizens of this place, to try to create or rekindle some good fortune in their life, just as Srila Prabhupada told us, I have created your good fortune. And because in this Kali Yuga especially, the stranglehold of Maya, if one is strangled or one is like, arrested and put in a straitjacket, and muzzled and just put in darkness, what facility does one have for any type of freedom? One is completely... So Maya has made them so averse to reality that even the best thing is presented to them. Not only can they not understand, but they have an adverse reaction. So misfortunate, unfortunate, so much misfortune. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come, and as Srila Prabhupada said on his visit in late February, early March to Atlanta in 1975, Lord Chaitanya, unlike Krishna, who was very merciful, he came and preached Bhagavad Gita, but he demanded, first of all, you surrender. But Lord Chaitanya, he makes no such demand. He is so kind. So that is Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of Godhead via the Sankirtan movement, the propagation of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is the mantra that Lord Chaitanya himself propagated and designated as the Yuga Dharma. Srila Prabhupada had such faith in the understanding of who Lord Chaitanya is and what is his position, that he was in many places. Actually, Prabhupada was speaking in Gainesville in his one and only visit, Florida, in 1971, and one sort of Christian-biased reporter or interviewer was challenging Srila Prabhupada, on whose authority are you speaking, or on whose authority is this presentation coming from? And Prabhupada simply said, we are speaking on the authority of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The man never even heard of Lord Chaitanya. What to speak of, have to give him an explanation of who Lord Chaitanya. But Prabhupada was just so deep in his faith and understanding, the man could not, he was just dumbstruck. He put forward no challenge whatsoever. He had to accept, based on the absolute faith of Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. The quality of Purusha exists both in the Supreme Godhead and in the living entity. Purusha means enjoyer. The spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. So this is a very obvious point, but it should be pointed out, stressed, and always kept in mind, because everyone in this world, especially in a place reputed for its so-called enjoyment like New York City, it's So people are, the idea that this is the best place to be makes them put up with just so much. The cost of living, the threat of crime, filth, violence, insanity all around us all the time. It's a city of extremes. There's more billionaires here than practically any place in the world. Actually, Mumbai has become one of the biggest places for billionaires per capita. That's an interesting fact. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna's enjoyment, as we were just saying earlier, anything that Krishna says or does is munificently beneficial for everyone in all times, places, and circumstances. So Krishna's enjoyment is the highest thing and the greatest thing and the most blessed thing. Whereas the imitation of Krishna's enjoyment by the perverse, cripple-minded living entity is the opposite. So much social anomaly, disease, torture, injustice is created by the lustful pursuit of false enjoyment in this material world. An analogy may be made with the rich man and the poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, and when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and the small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. Wonderful, wonderful example is Krishna's relationship with his dearly beloved childhood class friend, Sudam. By happenstance or circumstance, he was in poverty in his adult life, and his wife, not so much, or maybe mixed, but also, but for her own destitute condition, was thinking for her husband how he is in such a destitute. You go see your friend Krishna. He is the opulent king of Dwarka. He will help you. And the story is very wonderful. And he went there and was in such ecstasy, reuniting with his dear friend Krishna, and Krishna, knowing him to be the best of the Brahmins, just like was described here in previous verses. I don't see any living entity greater than the pure Brahmin who has no interest separate than mine. Prabhupada was leaving Los Angeles in 1970, and he was asking his leading devotees what he should do. It was at a momentous step, leaving Los Angeles, the world headquarters of ISKCON, the seat of the BBT, and everything was going on so nicely. Anyway, circumstantially, Prabhupada felt he had to leave. And so he's asking devotees what he should do. Actually, this is Dayananda Prabhu's story. Dayananda Prabhu, one of the first devotees of Prabhupada to join in California. He ultimately became the first temple president and established ISKCON Los Angeles, 1968. So, such a personality, your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, is asking you for advice, and you're going to, so he wanted to dodge it, and he said, well, Prabhupada, I think you should do whatever you want to do. It's like answering the question, but at the same time, taking a humble position. And Prabhupada just shot back, what do I want to do? I want to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. No separate motivation at all. Prabhupada was in Portland, Oregon in 1972, and Donavir, now Maharaj, of course, was the temple president at the time, and they were scheduled for a television show. And they got to the broadcasting building, and there was some mix-up, and they weren't prepared for Srila Prabhupada, but there was this young college student, like 21, 22 years old, and he said, well, I have a radio station upstairs, and I'd be very happy to interview the Swami. And so Prabhupada agreed. And this boy was very, very, very respectful to Srila Prabhupada. And at one point he asked him, why have you come? And Prabhupada said, I have come to remind everyone what they have forgotten, love of God. And the boy said, then are you the Messiah? You know, and Prabhupada didn't really, you know, like we say the Messiah here in the West, and it's like the one and only Jesus Christ, and there's nobody else, and it's so great and beyond comprehension. And Prabhupada took, oh, well, I'm coming to preach love of Godhead, and that's what you define as a Messiah? Yes, I'm the Messiah. And the boy was like, wow. Who asked you to come? And Prabhupada said, and he was thinking that God sent me down, and Prabhupada just said, my spiritual master asked me to come. As simple as that. And the young man was like deeply impressed by Prabhupada's humility in that way. That is like Bhakti Yoga. Purusha Purusham Bhajet. When the living entity enters into the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, how much enjoyment has Srila Prabhupada given to his spiritual master, to Lord Chaitanya, and ultimately to the divine couple of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna by his activities? It's just beyond calculation. He enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone's realization upon meeting Srila Prabhupada, especially his disciples, was that Srila Prabhupada was always with Krishna. The atmosphere surrounding Krishna, surrounding Srila Prabhupada, was always something super, super attractive and special. Shama Sundar Prabhu writes in his memories, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, that being in Prabhupada's presence was the most exhilarating happiness I ever had in my life. And I always wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada as much as I could. And he was saying how we would scheme to keep Prabhupada with us. You know, devotees wanted him at their temple, and, you know, Prabhupada had to make, but we were so greedy and we were so selfish. But Prabhupada, you can't leave. We have 2 months of engagements. All big people are coming, and okay. And he said, Shama Sundar, that just being around Prabhupada, it was like this transcendental calm. If you just move away from Prabhupada a certain distance, then it's like, but if you came close to him, then, and devotees had the realization that, you know, so many problems, and you know, I want to, and as soon as I came into Prabhupada's presence, you know, I'm going to tell him what the problem is, and he's going to help me. Even before I'm offering my obeisances, I completely forgot what the problem was. And Prabhupada would say, is everything all right? Krishna is never in anxiety. He's never unhappy. He's always happy. Prabhupada would teach. So similarly, Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu, he from England, and he was at one time the temple president of the very place, and then Prabhupada brought him to India. So he came to see Prabhupada in his room in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada was like this, his head in his hand, and he looked really like downcast. And then Prabhupada looked up and he said to Prabhu Vishnu, "This Bombay project is taxing my brain and giving me so much anxiety. But it's for Krishna, therefore it's all right." So also, today is the appearance day of Srivasa Thakur. Srivasa Thakur, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktabrinda. He is the personification of Jiva, the perfect Jiva Tattva, the pure devotee, and particularly Sri Narada Muni. Srivasa Thakur, he appeared to be a householder, and in his house was the place where the Sankirtan movement was started, previously to Lord Chaitanya's appearance by Advaita Acharya. They would gather at the house of Srivasa Thakur, also his own house, Advaita Acharya in Shantipur, the pure devotees, and ultimately discuss Krishna consciousness and herald and pray for the descent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, he took the facility of Srivasa Thakur's house to, as we were hearing this morning, have Harinam Sankirtan on a platform between himself and his confidential pure devotees that was to be protected from those who, what to speak of not being on the same platform, but those who are averse. So this is a good example, but it shouldn't be taken out of context to shirk our responsibility by propagating the Sankirtan movement amidst the general public. Well, Prabhu, you know, we're like all our kirtan retreats and everything, you know, that this is the house of Srivasa Thakur, and we're keeping it confidential. Okay, but at the same time, where is the proportionate going out in public? You know, you can't retreat unless you fought in the war first. Otherwise, the concept of a retreat is an oxymoron. It doesn't really make much sense. Here is one amazing Leela that took place in the house of Srivasa Thakur. One day, the two brothers, Lord Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, were dancing in the holy house of Srivasa Thakur. At that time, a calamity took place. Srivasa Thakur's son died, yet Srivasa Thakur was not at all sorry. This is from Adi Leela, chapter 17, Pastimes of the Lord in His Youth. I began on we're on verse 229. We don't need to open the thing, just listen and everything good. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu caused the dead son to speak about knowledge, and then the two brothers personally became the sons of Srivasa Thakur. Purport. This incident is described as follows by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Ravaha Bhasya. One night, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing with his devotees at the house of Srivasa Thakur, one of Srivasa Thakur's sons, who was suffering from some disease, died. Srivas Thakur was so patient, however, that he did not allow anyone to express sorrow by crying, for he did not want the kirtan going on at his house to be disturbed. Thus, kirtan continued without a sound of lamentation. But when the kirtan was over, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who could understand the incident, declared, "There must have been some calamity in this house." When he was then informed about the death of Srivas Thakur's son, he expressed his regret, saying, "Why was this news not given to me before?" He went to the place where the son was lying dead and asked him, "My dear boy, why are you leaving the house of Srivas Thakur?" The dead son immediately replied, "I was living in this house as long as I was destined to live here. Now that the time is over, I am going elsewhere according to your direction. I am your eternal servant, a dependent living being. I must act only according to your desire. Beyond your desire, I cannot do anything. I have no such power." Hearing these words of the dead son, all the members of Srivas Thakur's family received transcendental knowledge. Thus, there was no cause for lamentation. This transcendental knowledge is described in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 13. Tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuyati. When someone dies, he accepts another body. Therefore, sober persons do not lament. After the discourse between the dead boy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, funeral ceremonies were performed, and Lord Chaitanya assured Srivas Thakur, "You have lost one son, but Nityananda Prabhu and I are your eternal sons. We shall never be able to give up your company." This is an instance of a transcendental relationship with Krishna. We have eternal transcendental relationships with Krishna as his servants, friends, fathers, sons, or conjugal lovers. When the same relationships are pervertedly reflected in this material world, we have relationship as the sons, fathers, friends, lovers, masters, or servants of others, but all these relationships are subject to termination within a definite period. If we revive our relationship with Krishna, however, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our eternal relationship will never break to cause our lamentation. So, there's the story of Gopal Chapala. So the doors were closed, so the non-believers would not be able to come and make fun. Thus, the non-believers almost burned to ashes and died in envy. To retaliate, they planned various ways to give trouble to Srivas Thakur. One night, while kirtan was going on inside Srivas Thakur's house, a Brahmin named Gopal Chapal, the chief of the non-believers, who was talkative and very rough in his speech, placed all the paraphernalia for worshiping the goddess Durga outside Srivas Thakur's door. Purport: the Brahmin Gopal Chapal wanted to defame Srivas Thakur by proving that he was actually a Shakta, or a worshipper of Bhavani, the goddess Durga, but was externally posing as a Vaishnava. In Bengal, there is perpetual competition between the devotees of goddess Kali and the devotees of Lord Krishna. Generally, Bengalis, especially those who are meat eaters and drunkards, are very much attached to worshiping the goddess Durga, Kali, Sital, and Chandi. Such devotees, who are known as Shaktas, or worshippers of the Shakti Tattva, are always envious of Vaishnavas, since Srivas Thakur was a well-known and respected Vaishnava in Navadvip. Gopal Chapal wanted to reduce his prestige by bringing him down to the platform of the Shaktas. Therefore, outside Srivas Thakur's door, he placed various paraphernalia for worshiping Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, such as a red flower, plantain leaf, a pot of wine, and reddish sandalwood paste. In the morning, when Srivas Thakur saw all this paraphernalia in front of his door, he called for the respectable gentlemen of the neighborhood and showed them at night he was worshiping Bhavani. So we try to create a situation where people will notice that we're great. But here, Srivasa Thakur is the opposite. Gentlemen, just see. Now you can understand my actual position. He's, Gentlemen, every night I worship the goddess Bhavani. Since the paraphernalia for the worship is present here, now all you respectable Brahmins and members of the higher castes can understand my position. Then all the assembly, now of course they didn't believe this, they understood the situation. And all the assembled gentlemen exclaimed, "Who is this? What is this? Who has performed such mischievous activities? Who is that sinful man?" After 3 days, leprosy attacked Gopal Chappal and blood oozed from the sores all over his body. His whole body burned in distress. So he left the village. You know, you're infected with leprosy. It's an infectious disease. One day, however, he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passing by and spoke to him as follows. He's begging for relief from the suffering. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared greatly angry, and in angry mood he spoke some words chastising him. You have made Srivasa Thakur appear to be worshiping the goddess Bhavani. Simply for this offense, you will fall down into hellish life for 10 million births. So, we should not defame a Vaishnava. So, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes. Can the online people hear you or no? You have to do microphone? All right, whatever. You have to speak loud.
Srivasa Thakur was doing kirtan all night, and he was basically doing service all day. He didn't seem to have a job. How does that work? How was he maintaining his family?
Well, in the case of Advaita Charya, it's described that he was in a similar mode of life, and he was having when Lord Chaitanya agreed to stay on an extra 5 or 7 days before proceeding to Jagannath Puri, so great festival, and as much people as he fed and as much goods as he used, that many reappeared. So, what's the difficulty to understand? Do you or I or someone can we live like that? Well, maybe we should do more Sankirtan. Prabhupada would be asked questions like this. Actually, Guru Gauranga, Prabhupada came to Geneva, Switzerland, for 10 or 12 days in May and June of 1974, and he met the governor of Geneva, and they had a nice meeting, conversation, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, he had a concern that if everyone joined your movement, what would happen to the economy? And Prabhupada explained Varnashram Dharma, and et cetera, et cetera. Dallas, Texas. If everyone believed in Krishna to the extent that you do, what would happen to this country, United States of America? They'd be very happy and peaceful. There'd be no more hippies. What is a hippie? Is it someone who'd smoke? That you know better than I. So, be thou happy by this yagna, because by its performance, all desirable things will be bestowed upon you. You know, people, they like to follow the fad, you know. As I said, Prabhupada's instructions in August 1968 to the three couples, Yamuna and Guru Das, Mukunda Janaki, Shamasundar and Malati. He instructed them as per the example of the Charlie Chaplin movie that he had seen as a child, that one naughty boy had naughty, you know, mischievous, they put like glue on benches around a party where like high-class people were attending a ball dance, and the men sat on the bench. One man sat on the bench, and when he got up, his whole tuxedo was ripped off all the way down the back. And instead of like, oh my God, what an embarrassment, he thought, oh, this is great. This is the new fad, you know, and he's dancing with exuberance, and, you know, and then everybody else caught on. Well, I should do this too. So be a Hare Krishna devotee, shave your head and dance in the streets, etc., etc. So somebody's got to take the first step to rip their coattails, you know. But whether, you know, we don't create a domino effect and like everybody, you know, at least you can close your eyes at the time of death and say, I did the right thing. I did the best I could. And the result is not up to Krishna, and we cannot judge the thing or try to calculate the thing by, you know, our whatever brain substance we have or whatever perception we have and the time that we have in this short lifespan. In the course of eternity, what does it mean? And even in the course of 10,000 years of Lord Chaitanya's golden age, what does our little lifetime really mean? But we just added ourselves as a twig to the gigantic bonfire of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. No, we did the right thing. Is that okay? Anything else? 9 o'clock, punctuality. Swaprashadana dilo bhai. Say I don't eat the cow. Radha Govinda Guna Gal. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Sri Srivasa Kaur ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribo. His Grace Adai Praman Prabhu ki jai.